This video is brought to you by Squarespace. In this world, everyone wants to be unique.
Yo, have you seen this hair design everywhere? Ask everybody where they got that shit from. Tell them where it started. They're gonna look at me, you heard?
But there is a place on this wonderful thing we call Earth where that is not the case. Where being individual, being unique is seen as gross. And that is China. There's a phrase in China which is that the big tree, the tall tree, attracts the wind and it destroys them.
That's bad.
And that is exactly what happened to today's subculture, which is the Shamate. At first glance, you'll probably see him and you'll think, Jimmy, that's an emo. And this is where I'll say, my friend, come closer. Come closer. Let me tell you about the origins and the nuances. I'll give it to you that the women, to be honest, look very much just like your standard emo scene girl. I'll give you that. But it's really the boys where things get a little spicy. If we start in the leggy region, they have skinny jeans with rips in them. But they do differ from the emos because they all choose different colors. So the Shamate might wear red. They might wear blue. They might wear sort of pastel colors. Also, very closely, you must look at the ankle. The Shamate love to reveal a small, slender piece of the ankle. If we move slightly up top, they also will wear typically a belt around the trousers that is more often like a knockoff Gucci kind of belt, in which they'll then tuck in a tight-fitting, either plain t-shirt or a tight-fitting vest just to show off the fucking guns. And this does differ from the emos. If you look at the emos, they're wearing band merch, you know, Last Days of November 2010 tour. Whereas a big difference is with the music. These lot don't listen to that style of music. We'll get into it more in a bit. And also you've even got like nice leather jackets with studs. That, again, that's not something you'd see emos wearing. It's something you would see more so in the punk era. And what you'll begin to learn is that the Shamate really is a mishmash of various different eras, different styles, different cultures, all brought into one thing. But finally, there is one thing that is just so, is the main point, literally the point of the Shamate, and that is the hair. My bloody golly goodness goshingtons. The hair is just, that's where it all comes together, baby. To me, I would say it looks like a paper mache balloon where the hair is sort of like glued on top of it and then they pop the balloon. They're just the volume. Look at the volume in the hair. It's like the volume on your dad's phone when he's receiving a text. They will go for these massive spikes, these bright, vibrant colors like pinks, blues, greens. It's just so disproportionate. The hair is so big. It's like one of those squeezy toys where you squeeze the body and the head inflates. And it's interesting because the origins of this haircut can be traced back to one bruh, Luo Fuxing. Yes, let's all laugh. Fuxing, I get it. Are we done, class? Can I go back to teaching? Luo is what, in England here, we would call a weird ute. And he is considered the godfather, the big daddy of Shamate. He single-handedly invented this whole subculture himself. In 2006, Luo Fuxing was only 11 years old. And he grew up very poor, so he would go to internet cafes. He didn't have a fucking Dell Megatron super back-off baby. One day at the internet cafe, he was deep in a browsing sesh, and he came across what is known as Visual Kai. Before we go further with this video, I need to give a massive shout out to Squarespace for sponsoring. Squarespace is the #1 platform for building and developing your very own website. It's quick, simple, easy to use, and dare I say it, actually very enjoyable. With tons of templates to choose from, you can pick any of them, twiddle the buttons and customize them to fit your brand and perfectly match what it is that you do. It will take your business to that next level and make it look glossy and professional. As well, there's tons of built-in tools like email marketing, appointment scheduling, and members-only content. I've been using Squarespace myself yourself, and it's very enjoyable to use it, and it makes having a very professional website very simple. So be sure to check out squarespace.com/Jimmy the Giant, and to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain, use the code Jimmy the Giant. Anyway, back to the video. Visual Kai was a movement, subculture, aesthetic, music. I don't really know. I spent 40 minutes watching these people talk about it, and
What is Visual K?
Depends on the person that you're asking, I think.
I wouldn't call myself VK, but I am VK inspired.
in Japan in the 80s and 90s, you would have a bunch of bands come along like X-Japan who were really inspired by the glam rock era, which was happening. You had T-Rex, David Bowie, Motley Crue. And Visual Kai is this thing that still exists today, which spreads not only through music, but into video games, etc. And in 2006, our boy Luo stumbled across Visual Kai, and he was fixated, not by the music, but purely by the hair. He ran out the internet cafe straight to the barber. He said, just fuck me up. Then he went to a dollar store, literally grabbed some spray paint and fucking sprayed a penis in his hair. Put on some lipstick, pierced his ears, got some tattoos, wore some black clothing. It was a pretty busy day for Luo. And after his transformation was completed, he went straight back to the internet cafe and loaded up the webcam. And so he started to post all these pictures to early forums and social media, and the boy went viral. Luo was an early internet celebrity in China. He was like the equivalent of like Zezima or Ziz or someone like that. The photos just started to spread and spread, and what was weird was that people started to copy his image, taking photos, uploading them, and doing the same thing as Luo. Before we go too far into the spread of the Shamate, it's really important to have a full understanding of Chinese culture. And to do that, we need to go all the way back to the 90s.
It all started at the beginning.
In the 90s, whilst you were wearing Jenko jeans, doing the Macarena and getting strangled by slinkies, in China, these fads and gimmicks were nowhere to be seen. And that's because throughout the 1900s, China was completely shut off from the rest of the world. Close the doors, no one's coming in, all right. But then man like Deng Xiaoping came in and said, open the doors. Deng, mate, you can't be serious. Do it. All right, fine. In the late 70s through to the 80s, China was transforming from this lonely, isolated bruh who watched a few Charisma on Command videos, and now was this charismatic Giga Chad. Everyone wanted to be China's friend. Your $200 Nike Aero Pump orthopedic waterbed mattress with Big Bass Fishing PlayStation 2 built in. All of that was being made by 10-year-old Li Ming, who was chain smoking cigarettes in his last 16-hour shift in the sweatshop, making 20p an hour. And for the big businesses, the factory owners, the government officials, this was pretty ideal. But for the factory workers, it wasn't so ideal. What would start happening is a wave of workers from very rural parts of China would come to big cities and migrate and start working there. Places like Guangdong, which is a part of China that is kind of known as the factory of the world. This place is massive. It's a fair bit bigger than England, with double the population of about 120 million people. And these rural migrants came to Guangdong with this dream of having a better life, making more money, getting a good job, and making something of themselves. And they arrived in Guangdong and their souls were destroyed. They would literally be paid pennies an hour to manufacture goods for the Western world, working ridiculously long shifts in these horrible conditions that literally had nets surrounding the building to stop people jumping out and deleting themselves. And so it kind of created this underclass of migrant workers. The people who lived in Guangdong originally and all these other parts, the locals, they would look at the migrant workers in a sort of negative way. They would see them as lower class. They would be rejected from most of society. They've also moved away from their friends and their family into this cold, brutal city. And like after just having all this optimism just sucked out of you and becoming a grunt worker in a factory with no personality identity, no friends. When one day you log on to QQ.com and you see this man, Luo Fuxing, and you think to yourself, fuxing hell, I want to be just like him. Luo had actually started to set up groups on popular social networks like QQ and Taiba, and he would make these groups called the Shamate family. He actually created the term Shamate by looking into fashion. You know, he developed this new interest, and he was looking at English websites, and he saw the word smart, and he kind of poorly translated it back into Shamate. And so like the Shamate family group started to just organically grow, and Luo Foxing was like the be-all and end-all. He was the kingpin, he was the leader of these groups. And they were very organized. He would do things like tell everyone to go and invade different forums on different websites, on Badu and Tayanya, and they would post their pictures promoting their hairstyle, promoting the Shamate. And this kind of spread the group even further, leading to him organizing these offline gatherings in person.
杀马特开始迅速流行，共同的风格让他们相互靠拢，形成一个大家庭。
There was so much demand for this insane haircut that he would open his own hairdressing studio where he could do it for people. And he wasn't the only one. Like, this haircut became so popular that there were hairdressers making good livings off of just doing that style. Enough to buy a house, have savings. And the Shamate family, that group itself grew to 200,000 members. And it's estimated that there were millions of kids across China doing this thing. If you go to shamate.org, you can see all of the comments of people saying, please let me join. I want to join. Please, I want to be in the FaZe clan. Come on, I'll fucking quickscope someone. Please, I beg you, buddy. But look, I know you're sat there. You're still thinking to yourself, deep inside of that brain, that noggin, that noodle, you're thinking that this is just emo. And I have to promise you it's not. So let's play a little game of That's Not Emo. Question number 1. Who is more organized, the emos or Shamate? The Shamate, they had a whole network. Luo Foxing was at the top. He would literally tell people to recruit other people. There was rules. Correct. Yeah, like to be in the Shamate, there was an actual imposed hierarchy. Luo Foxing, on one of his internet cafe sessions, started looking into like business management, and he saw how businesses orient. He would use terms like founder, deputy, founder, elder, member. There were strict rules. They would go out and try and recruit new members. Join us, please. The emos weren't doing that. Secondly, the music taste, right? The music. God, how do I explain the music? The music is closer to what you'd hear at a squat rave in Liverpool as opposed to the emos, like Midwest emo rock music. They would listen to this happy hardcore music that would have DJ vocals on top of it. And when the Shamate were really feeling it, like they were really loving the vibe, they would bust out into breakdance. There is not a single emo on this planet that has even danced. They were sat in the back of the club with a WKD held tightly to their chest. Whilst the Shamate would have this strange habit of buying bags of cement and throwing it at each other whilst they're breakdancing. As well, they'd buy a scooter, they'd ride around the city, lady on the back, big speaker playing this shit music. And on top of that, the men would wear white makeup on their skin so that they looked less rural. And that's a major part. Like, the reason why these people did this was because they were looked so down upon in society as rural migrant workers that the whitening of the skin was to look like they didn't spend all day in the sun doing hard labor work like they would in the rural towns. Whilst the emos was just, you know, moody little Stevie who just fucking was fed up of his mum not letting him play on the PlayStation. They're not emos, I rest my case. The Shamate offered a family to these people who didn't have any standing or any identity in their culture. And so they would come together, they would hang out, they would drink these cheap, shitty, knockoff beers that were unbranded. They could only ever do this on the weekend because their strict rules of working in a factory meant they couldn't have certain hairstyles and colors in their hair. And they would spend the last of their money to afford to do this with their hair. But you see, just as this whole thing was growing so big and so vibrant, one song would drop that would change everything. Loosely, this song translates to Shamate meets washing, cutting, and blowing. It's just a song taking the piss out of the Shamate. The Shamate thing really was like 2009 to 2013, and towards the end, you would start to see lots and lots of anti-Shamate content, like parodies, even people harassing Shamate in public. If they would go out, they would have things thrown at them. People would shout at them. There was even stories of people being killed for dressing like Shamate. And when this would go online, all of the comments would be saying, "Good job, well done." There grew to be like these online campaigns against them. These other online communities, like Lee Yai and even World of Warcraft, their online communities went to war against the Shamate. They would infiltrate their groups and literally would like ban all the members from these big groups. There was this very anti-Shamate sentiment growing amongst most of China. And even when we look sort of politically, Deng Xiaoping, the boy who opened the doors, as much as he loved to suckle the teat of the sweet, sweet moolah of the West, there was one thing he didn't like that much, and that was anything else.
The Chinese government reacted angrily this morning to Google's announcement that it would no longer self-censor content and was closing its search engine in China.
The Golden Shield Project and the Great Firewall of China was an attempt, a pretty successful attempt, at keeping out intruding cultures from the rest of the world. You can give us your money, but, you know, keep your beanie babies. Deng Xiaoping had this expression he would often say, which was, if you open the window to fresh air, you have to expect some flies to blow in. So no fresh air. You just enjoy the muggy, smoggy, dusty air. Now in peach flavor. And from my research, it does appear that the Chinese government actually moved to try and like suppress the Shamate. They had this whole campaign of moving what they deemed as vulgar, low-class content from the internet. And that was exactly the phrase that lots of people would use when they described the Shamate. They would say it was vulgar and gross and low class. And all of this leads to 2011. After the mounting pressure, the condemnation, the judgment, the leader of this rebellious, non-conformist movement decided it was time for him to cut his hair. After Luo cut his hair, it was really the beginning of the end. He deleted all his social media, all his accounts. He renounced himself as the supreme leader of the Shamate family, which I am going to say it probably was a good thing. It did kind of have culty vibes to it. Like they looked like they were moving toward the final haircut or something. But nonetheless, by 2013, much of the people who would consider themselves Shamate had started to cut their hair and started to quit. And I get it as well, like I'm taking the piss for sure. It looks silly, it looks weird. But was all the hate, the amount of hate that they got, was it warranted? There was often these stories spread around the Shamate that they were dangerous, scary, criminal people. And it turned out that a lot of these stories were false. They weren't true at all. They were just made up to scare people and turn people on the Shamate. It seems largely that they were just a group of harmless outcasts trying to create an identity. But this really brings us to the main point that in Chinese culture, being anti-mainstream, being non-conformist, they're really negative traits. This is a culture that for the longest time has been built on the idea of collectivism and not individuality. There would be reports in this time of like patriotic Chinese people who would hunt down Shamate and they would accuse them of being foreign worshippers. The Shamate went against lots of what the Chinese people believed in. And so again, whereas in the West, the emo culture just sort of died out organically and a lot of it got swallowed up into the mainstream culture and affected different movements, moved into like the hipsters, etc. In China, it really seemed as though the Shamate were just exterminated. And so, after 2013, the Shamate were no more. But just like every fucking thing on earth that we once hated and said was going to destroy society, a few years later, they looked back and went, you remember that Shamate thing? That was pretty fun, wasn't it? That was pretty goofy. What's up with that? Where did they go? A load of articles started to pop up in the late 2010s about what happened to the Shamate. There'd be articles on Luo Foxing, what he was doing now. And it seemingly created this kind of rose-tinted lensed view of the past, this fond memory. And from that, created a resurgence of the Shamate. Lots and lots of posts would start popping up of people recreating the look, dressing like Shamate. This was probably more cosplay than it was a lifestyle choice, but even Luo Foxin himself came back. And boy, he had a vengeance. I mean, the hairstyles now. He'd gone into hibernation and came back bigger and better than ever. There's a TikTok user by the name of Master DD4. And I would say he's like the new alpha of the group. Luo stepped back. He's past it. And him and his band of merry men have taken the look and really lent into the kind of smart side of it. They wear suits now, all red. They do all these kind of K-pop hand gestures. They look more plastic. Somehow the hair is even weirder. They use these face filters to make themselves look like dolls. Whiter skin, weirder hair. And of course it gets some hate, obviously, but society is more embracing of these weird things just globally. Like different styles, we're more used to it now. And it's kind of nice to see, you know? After all that bullying, all that bullshit, the Shamate have really managed to hold a legacy and a sort of sweet, soft spot in the heart of the Chinese culture. Yes, it looked stupid, it was weird, but it was something for people that had nothing. If you enjoyed this video, I'll be researching all my future content on Twitch, 3 p.m. on Wednesdays. Check out my community tab for other times and dates. Peace.